In this video, I'm going to share my understanding of compound interest, and when I realized it took me 2 years to understand it, I lost the gains that I could have made if I were able to understand it sooner. As you'll soon learn if you don't know yet, time is a crucial variable with compound interest, so the sooner you can understand it, the sooner you can benefit. I know for myself, investing can be a very intimidating idea, especially when you don't have a lot of money, and maybe you might think that investing is just something for wealthy people to concern themselves with. So before I tell you about investing, I think it's important to point out that you are already making decisions with your money. So I'm going to show you the most common decisions people make with their money. So typically when someone receives a check, most of their money goes to basic expenses like housing, food, etc. When your basic needs are paid for, the extra money has a few different places that it can go. Sometimes the money is used for discretionary spending, like buying things that you don't necessarily need, but bring you happiness right now in the moment. Sometimes the extra money is held in cash or in a bank account with no interest. And then finally, another place people put their money is a low interest savings account. This interest rate varies from what type of account you have versus also the bank that's providing it for you. But according to the FDIC, as of February 21st, 2023, the national average rate for savings accounts was 0.35%. Now, many people do not invest because it can be confusing, and depending on your situation, it can be a riskier option. What I'd like to propose is to help you understand the difference in risk between holding your money in cash or low interest savings versus putting it in something like an index fund like the S&P 500. When you hold cash, the bet that you're making is that the cash will retain its value and continue to be recognized for its value by others. Why would it make sense to make this bet? Well, the US currency is a very stable currency, and since you could say the Declaration of Independence in 1776 all the way up until now, 2023, the US currency has remained a pretty stable thing, so the bet actually makes sense as a secure bet to place because it has worked for the last 247 years or so. The only flaw in this bet is inflation. Over time, the power of the dollar decreases. So if I'm able to buy a dozen of eggs for $3 or $4 right now, in 30 years or so, that money is no longer going to be able to buy a dozen of eggs. And even when you put money into a low interest savings account with 0.35 interest, it does help fight inflation a little bit, but the reality is inflation has been a lot more than 0.35%, so you're still going to end up losing money. As you can see, in recent years, inflation has been a lot rougher than it typically is. If you look at the history of inflation, then you can see inflation is usually a little bit more stable than it has been recently. So this kind of begs the question, are there places people have put their money that have done better than inflation for, let's say, the past 100 years? Well, yes. The simplest one that I personally put my money into is the S&P 500. I used Vanguard's S&P 500, which obviously hasn't been around for hundreds of years or whatever, but it's very closely related to the S&P 500. And over the past 100 years or so, the S&P 500 has averaged a 10.345% return, which is much higher than inflation. So this is just all to help illustrate that putting your money into something like the S&P 500 and letting it sit for a long period of time is much better than putting a lot of money into a bank account and letting it sit there for a long period of time. But I think I'd like to help you guys understand the math that I did that made me finally start investing and made me feel the urgency. I need to start investing right now. So to give a little bit of context, when I graduated high school, I was going to college. Right now, I've been in college this is my 4th year in college, and I plan on graduating next year. But when I first went into college, my main focus was I just didn't want to graduate with debt. That was my main focus. And I think if you are in that situation, then you probably don't need to worry about investing yet. It's great that you're trying to learn, but I'd probably stick to just like, don't acquire a lot of student loans and be very worried about what the interest rate are going to be on those loans. Anyways, I started learning about investing and compound interest, particularly the Roth IRA from Graham Stephan. And I realized then, because if you guys are aware, Roth IRAs have a yearly limit And so even if you're very wealthy, you can only contribute a certain amount of money per year. But I realized I had lost my opportunity to start investing into a Roth IRA when I was 18 years old, because that's the earliest that you can start. Anyways, so one thing that I enjoyed kind of looking at is when I would create these hypothetical scenarios like, okay, well, if I invest this much every single year and the average rate of return stays around like 8 to 10% over the next 40 years, and I just keep investing this much every year, I would end up with like whatever $1 million or something when I'm 65, or like 2, 3, 4, 5 million even, depending on how much I'm investing. But there's one particular equation that helped me realize, wait a second, if I waited another year and didn't invest another year, the potential gains I would lose out on would be very significant. Okay, so the scenarios I compared were one where I put $6,000 into a Roth IRA at the age of 18, and one where I put $6,000 into a Roth IRA at the age of 20. And in both scenarios, I take the money out at the age of 65. And so the only thing I'm comparing is, what if I wait those 2 years, right? And so in this scenario, I'm assuming an 8% return from the S&P 500 based on the history. And this is how the math breaks down. In 1 year of growth, 8% on 6,000, it turns into 6,480. But to calculate 2 years, you can't just do 16. It would actually be 6,000 times, 108% or 1.08, and then times another 1.08. And that's actually different. You don't add another $480. You'd actually get up to 6,998.40. And you can also represent that as 6 times 1.08 squared, right? But the power that you raise the number to is the number of years you let it accumulate. So going back to the two scenarios I compared, the way to do the math is just, if you do it at 18, you put the power to 47. And if you invested at 20 years old, you just put the power to 45. And that's how many years the $6,000 has to accumulate. And you can calculate the difference. And the 2 years of difference is $31,869.37. Obviously, the experience of the difference would only be when you're actually 65. But it made me realize, well, the time I wait is actually worth so much. And so the longer I wait, I'm actually losing money by waiting. Anyways, when I saw this number, I realized I need to start investing as soon as I can. Otherwise, I'd be losing out on gains. And so the age when I actually started investing is 20 years old, actually, not 18 years old, about like a year and a half ago. I'm only 21 right now. This gave me the drive not only to invest in a Roth IRA, but to also see what I could do to increase my income right now at a young age, so that I could maybe even, invest more money into a regular investment account and still take advantage of those interest rates and getting that compound interest over time. I should also say that you should have an emergency fund, and maybe even a rainy day fund of something like 6 months of expenses, just to give you that peace of mind, so that also you don't take your money out of your investments at the exact wrong time. Thank you all for watching this far. I hope you found this helpful, or maybe even got something small out of this. If you know anyone that needs to hear about this, please share this video with them, and I'll see you guys in the next one.